You're listening to Kingstown Radio, online at www.kingstownradio.co.uk.
You'd be a fool to miss it.
1350 AM, Kingstown Radio in East Yorkshire.
It was windy old weather, stormy old weather. When the wind blows, we all pull together.
Hello, I'm John Butcher. Welcome to Time and Tide. Quiz shows have long been a staple of the TV schedules. But is it just me, or do the questions seem to be getting easier? I dug out an old quiz book to do a comparison. Not just any old quiz book, mind you. The imaginatively named Giant Quiz Book was published in 1939 and provides a fascinating window onto a different way of life. For example, the book mentions Hottentots and Pickaninnies. One of the questions asks, how many legs has a Zulu? There was no such thing as political correctness in 1939, and race was a concept used only by intellectuals. World War II was still over the horizon, and many people hadn't even travelled outside their own town or village, let alone to a different continent, even though we still had an empire. If you look at a world map, the book asks, how can you tell the British possessions? They were coloured red, and there were a lot of them. Some of the questions would have a modern-day social worker frothing at the mouth. Take this one, although it's probably tongue-in-cheek. If you haven't a thermometer, the best way to test the bath water for the baby is to put your finger in it, test it with your elbow, or put the baby in and see if it turns red. And what is the sole industry of the Antarctic region? The answer's whaling. Cue gnashing of teeth from Greenpeace headquarters. Odd little quirks of humour creep in here and there. What is a caterpillar? The answer given is an upholstered worm. Is there anything you can't preserve in alcohol? Your dignity. Bit of social comment there. What is the definition of nothing? A balloon with the skin taken off. And one I particularly like, what is the greatest power in the world? I'll give you the answer to that one later. Some of the questions have a distinctly uncosmopolitan feel by today's standards. But remember, society wasn't so sophisticated back then. What is the difference between whoopee and rupee? If you had a gherkin, would you put it on, eat it, put it out to pasture, or decorate the house with it? Are red flannels warmer than white ones? If you don't know, go to the back of the class. While we're on the subject of red flannels, what's the chief ingredient of raw hash? I've never heard of it. The book says it's beetroot. I suppose that's one you would only know if you were there at the time. The same with, why is helium, which is heavier than hydrogen, preferred in aircraft? Aircraft? I didn't know aircraft used helium. Unless the compiler, Mr. Fred Garrigus, is perhaps referring to airships, which were still around then. Try this one. Name a democratic nation in which women may not vote. I can hear feminist hackles rising. But remember, this was over 60 years ago. Surprisingly, the answer is France. So, was the standard of education better or worse than it is now? I think it's relative. On one hand, for instance, all the quizzes are numbered using Roman numerals. I always had trouble with those, and I bet kids these days would have even less of a clue. On the other hand, is there any difference between commute and compute? Compute had even been invented in 1939, so it was probably a hard question for its time. Some questions are even more fiendish, but the general public were obviously expected to have a chance of answering them. Give the meaning of the following: octavo, Dei gratia, ad libitum, per centum, ad valorem. How many schools now teach Latin? Or, if someone told you that you were being followed by a deficiency of light caused by the interruption of light waves by an opaque body in an illuminated arc, would you be worried? I think I would be, unless I knew that it only meant I was casting a shadow. Here's one to test your vocabulary. Translate: malignant depredations penalised by incarceration, involuntary servitude or execution are in no degree conducive to lucrative emolument. In other words, crime doesn't pay. And can you tell me what is the only living thing that can be turned inside out and still live? It's not a trick question, so I'll give you a few moments to think about it. Meanwhile, if you were served a steak that was coriaceous, could you eat it? Yes, you could, although you probably wouldn't want to because it would be leathery. And that's if you hadn't already lost your appetite because of the previous question, the answer to which is a leech. My brain is starting to hurt. I think I'll go for a pint. They're having a pub quiz tonight. Far easier. And the greatest power in the world? A woman's tears, of course. I'm John Butcher, and you've been listening to Time and Tide.
It was windy old weather, stormy old weather. When the wind blows, we all pull together.